Hi, this is Gary D. Concourt from morethanasnapshot.com. In this episode, we're going to be critiquing some great images, and we might as well get right to it. First of all, if you have any images that you would like to have critiqued, you can always join morethanasnapshot.com and take our class, and you could have your images critiqued too. So we'll start off tonight with a really nice image. Let me make this a little bit larger. Here we have a landscape image, and it's really nice. We have nice colors, a nice interesting location. Um, we do have some foreground interest, some middle ground interest, some background interest, and it is a cool place that you'd probably want to visit, so it makes for an interesting image. The exposure everywhere throughout the image looks like it's all well done. We have a nice blue sky, nice puffy white clouds, and the same reflection in the water down below. So all of that is looking good. I like the image overall. The only thing that I would, if I had to look for something to talk about in the image, would be that to me the most interesting part of the image is this interesting stump down here in the water. So I might like that to be my foreground interest. I don't know what the terrain is like down here to getting down there, but let's assume that we can. If we could, I would like that to be my foreground interest. I would get down there with a wide angle lens and then fill the frame with this in the foreground and then have all this supporting it. Um, to me, this is okay as a foreground interest object, but it's not really, I don't know if it's really strong enough to carry the image all the way. But it is still a nice image. Good job. Here we have another really cool image because of the geometric shapes that we have following us down this path, leading to, well, it won't let me zoom in. I guess it's a small image. Some words on the building, so it is in a way a leading line that continues down throughout the image. And we even have it framed here with the shape of this opening. And I think that works well too. If I had to say something about this image, maybe that there is a lot of black space around. Maybe could have been tighter to this section. I don't know. But it's still a cool image and a really good one from this bunch. Okay, am I zoomed in? Oh, here we go. So here we have an interesting shot, I believe Lake Louise, and this one had a lot of potential to be a great image, but as you can see, there's some big exposure problems. Out in the field, to try to handle some of these exposure problems, if you had a graduated neutral density filter, you could have put the dark part of the filter over the sky, and that would have darkened this down to be a little more equal to the bottom. The one problem you would have with that is it would have also darkened down these rocks on both sides, the mountains. So probably a better technique would have been to do it as an HDR, high dynamic range photo, meaning you take several images at different exposures and then you put them all together in one image. Because right now sky is all overexposed, and even in the water here it's all overexposed, and that's really hurting this image. We can, in Lightroom, we can try to bring some of this back, and if it was a raw file, we might be able to get, a good amount of it back, but it's way overexposed. So let me just give that a shot. I'll use the graduated neutral density filter, and I'll reset it by double clicking on effect, and I'll drag down from the top till I get the part that I want covered, and then I'm going to reduce the exposure. Yeah, so even though I bring it back, it's so badly overexposed, there's no detail up here anymore, so that's not really going to help. But what other tip I can give you, though, is you'll notice by using the graduated filter, it did make the mountains on both sides darker. But what you can do if that ever happens to you is use the shadows slider and just pump up the shadows. Look at the difference we're getting in the mountains, and it's not affecting what we did in the sky because the shadow slider only works in the dark parts of the picture. So that's a very helpful tip for when you're working with the graduated neutral density filter. It brought back most of what's in our mountains. Now I might also try it again on the bottom, bringing it up from the bottom, because this part is overexposed as well. Yeah, that's making the part in the water look better. Again, it's making the both sides too dark, so we'll have to use the shadow slider to bring those back up. So it did an okay job of bringing things back on the bottom, but it's still way overexposed on the top. And we've kind of lost a lot of contrast in this image. So I would also, well, I'll move the blacks over a bit, and then I'll add contrast, except that it's making the image too dark. It does need contrast, but we need to boost these lower tones. So one way I could do that is using this little tone curve adjustment and just clicking on the areas that I want to make brighter and drag those up. Maybe make that area a little darker. And you can see here it's directly affecting my tone curve. And then I'll click that to put it away. I think we did as much as we can with this image. It's too bad. It looks like it would have been a beautiful image, but the exposures were just too far gone. Also, composition-wise, the image is tilted. You can see that it goes downhill. So that would need to be corrected. And also our horizon line is directly in the middle. You could say maybe you could get away with it because it's kind of a mirror image type of a shot. But yeah, you know, here you can definitely see the exact mirror image. I like how it almost looks like little arrowheads there. But it's too bad the exposure is just killing the shot. Okay, here we have some sort of a baseball field. Players are out there working. Problem right off the bat is it's got like a haze, fog. I don't know what it is, but it's taking away the overall clarity of the image. And of course, the lights up here are way overexposed. Also, we have a person's head here, so you got to watch for those things when you're framing up your shots. When we zoom in, again, it's really tough to tell that this photo it doesn't really have a lot of quality because it was shot at a high ISO, and the haze and the noise really taking away from the quality of the image. From a storytelling point of view, also probably not that interesting because the players all look like they're standing around waiting for something to happen. They're fixing the field. So, I don't know, in my opinion, maybe a little weak on story also. Here we have a nice beach scene. We have nice, interesting clouds here, and a nice diagonal line. I can't zoom in to see any other details, but we do have some overexposure in the sky, and this part down here might be a little bit dark. So again, you might be able to work with the graduated filter to darken the sky down here and brighten this part up here. And we have a very crooked horizon line that sort of starts in the middle of the frame and ends much lower. So I think you need to decide, what do you want, the sky or the ground? And we should have a straighter horizon line. And I think in this case maybe the sky is more interesting. So I'll bring this up. We're going to lose a bit of our diagonal, but we don't really want to lose the person. So I'll bring that over. Maybe something like that. Alright, here we have a very nice fall type image. And the composition looks nice. We have a beautiful reflection in the water, and just great for this season. Uh, my only comment is that it's overexposed. You can see here that the house is overly white, and you can see all these red. This red is indicating what's overexposed, and you can see the big peak here on the side. And also your clouds in the sky are overexposed. So you want to make sure you check your histogram when you take a shot, and if you have some peaks on the right side, make sure you take another shot or several shots as security that are darker. And if you have to, you can always do it as an HDR. But otherwise, a beautiful shot. And speaking of beautiful shots, this one is also very nice. Great cityscape. We have some interesting foreground, and then we have a cool cityscape in the background. Again, this is similar to a shot we've seen by Marco before, with definitely an interesting sky, and I like the sky. I think maybe the problem is the sort of the what is it, sepia tone in the sky is not represented in the water at all or anywhere else, and so that makes that tone seem a bit unrealistic. But it definitely does help to make the photo more interesting. It's just maybe try replicating some of that tone down in the water down below. Here we have a very nice baby portrait. I like the way it's set up a lot. We have in the sort of the third of the frame, I like the way the hands come together here, supporting the baby. I like the way we can see the rings nice and straight. It's clean and sharp and in focus. And you use the shallow depth of field so that the mother is out of focus. And that's an interesting choice. I think that it works great if this is a stock image to have the mother's face out of focus, and I think it looks fine, for any type of image. I'm just wondering if this lady is the customer buying the picture. Here she's only getting the back of the baby's head, and her face is not in focus. She might still love the shot, but maybe take an extra shot with the woman's face in focus. Just because if she's buying the picture, she might want to actually see a sharp picture of her face. I also like the background blown out. Really, there's no distractions. It is a great image. It looks very professional. Well done. I like it. Same with this one. Nice quality. I like the composition where it's off center, and this is sort of a leading line coming up to the baby's face. Cut a little bit off here at the top, but that's fine because you did it on purpose for the composition that you had. So the exposure is all really good. As far as the interest goes, well, obviously it's interesting because cute babies make for interesting shots. I'm sure you probably had no control over this, but the baby's eyes are a little bit squinty, and that would be the only minor criticism that I could have about it, and I'm sure there's really nothing you probably could have done about it. So great job. I like the way you set it up, and the execution is very good. Here we have some more beach scenes. I'm just looking to see if it's sharp down here. It is. It does not seem to be as sharp back here. And I can't tell what f-stop you used, but probably could have used a little more. Seems a little more in focus in front than it does back here. But interesting sky, but you got middle of the road horizon line It is straight, at least, so that's good. And the exposure looks good. This shot is nice. I like that this rock wall is like a diagonal leading line in the shot. I might like to see the subject more on this side of the frame. Maybe if she was sitting over here and you were shooting from the opposite direction. But without being there, it's tough to tell if that would make it better. Maybe you could just flip it in Photoshop to the other side. Overall, the exposure looks good. I think if it has any real problems, it might be its focus. And it's hard to tell with this small image if it's in focus or not. It doesn't look very sharp, but it could just be because it's such a small version of the shot. We can't zoom into 100% to tell. But if I had to guess, I would say that it's not very in focus. I like this one because, again, nice interesting leading line to this interesting sky. Problem, again, you got the horizon directly in the center. Now this time all the interesting stuff is on the bottom, so you should crop down from the top. And we'll lock that in. Also, I think now that the bottom is a little dark, so I'd like to brighten up the shadows and then add a little contrast. Maybe take away a little bit of vibrance. Let me try continue to brighten it up a bit. I don't want to overexpose the sky, but I think that is a bit better. As far as sharpness goes, again, this does not look very sharp, but I can't zoom in enough to really tell for sure, but I would say that these rocks are not in sharp focus. Very similar shot, so same critique. This one is not in focus in the front and has a lot of noise in the shot. It looks like there might have been some movement. I'm not sure if you use a tripod, but you should. If you did use a tripod, make sure you use a trigger release. It's just not very sharp. And the horizon's a little bit crooked. But you do have a very interesting scene, a nice interesting sky up here. You have some sort of a little lighthouse over here. So the scene definitely had potential. I think maybe there's a lot of nothing going on the left side. Maybe shift over a little more to the right. Maybe not even include these rocks, since the interesting stuff seems to be in the sky. This picture I like better than all of those. We have a nice interesting foreground plant leading us out to a staircase taking us out onto the beach. So I think compositionally I like this shot much better. It's got some interest, some storytelling. And the exposure is looking better on this image, and so is the sharpness. A scene with some houses in the background. Just, good practice shot, but it's not a very good time of the day, not a very interesting subject. Middle of the road horizon. Same kinds of things like that we mentioned in some of the other shots. Seagull. All right. The seagull's a little overexposed. You can see here on the feather detail. And you captured the seagull amongst a lot of sea trash, we'll call it. So, as far as the seagull goes, it looks like it's in focus. Again, just not a terribly interesting shot. This one is better, however, because now we're seeing a little more interest in the background, and the seagull is our foreground interest. It's a tiny bit overexposed in the little spot over here, but I like the tracks coming along the sand, and I like the background is nice also. We have the horizon in the upper third, and it's straight. We have good exposure in the clouds, a little bit of tiny bit of overexposure there. Not a big deal, but this is one of my favorites of that group, along with the one with the plant. These are stronger than some of the other ones. I like this one too. I like how you have these foreground rocks, and especially this one seems to be pointing at this mound over here. And the exposure is not bad. This is in the upper third, this is in the lower third. So composition wise and exposure wise, you're doing better. I think maybe we could brighten up the darker parts again, pump up the shadows a little bit, add a little contrast, maybe some clarity. No, not too much clarity. Vibrance, I'm going to add just a little bit, and there you have it. Some apples. This is not a bad composition. We have a tiny bit of overexposure here. This apple seems like it's sharper than this apple. This leaf is sharp. And again, now that I look at it, I think the leaf is sharper even than this apple. So if the apple is the most important part of the picture, the apple is what should be the sharpest. So, not bad. Here, the apples are sharper. Problem is the apples are dark, and we have all these bright spots in the background. So the viewer's eyes are always going to be drawn to these bright spots that are overexposed, and we're going to forget about the apples, almost like camouflaged. This one was shot in harsh sun, deep shadows, and to me not an interesting composition. Again, apple in shadow, bright background doesn't really work. Out of focus, bright background. This one's got more potential. You've got a little still life almost type setup going on here. Pumpkins and apples. We got a little bit of a storyline, fall storyline going on. But you do have overexposure on the highlights of the apples. And the focus on the pumpkin is not in focus at all. And all of the apples are also not in focus. But by the time you get back here, they're not in focus. So you needed a smaller f-stop to carry more depth of field in your photo. And if you have arranged these apples, you have a big hole here in the middle and on the side with no apples. And we got some background here that we could get rid of. And I would crop that out, except that I think it would affect the stem of the pumpkin. And I believe that is the last image. So we had a great week, a lot of wonderful images this week. Keep trying, keep practicing, and we'll see you next week. This has been Gary D. Tonicourt from morethanasnapshot.com.